Welcome to this For the Record update. I'm Laurie Dew. In March 2014, For the Record investigated the Obama administration's failure to comply with the Freedom of Information Act, also called FOIA. The law requires all government agencies to turn over requested documents within 20 days of receiving the request. But under the Obama administration, virtually every department has repeatedly failed to comply with the law. The public's right to know is critical if public officials are to be held accountable to the nation they serve. That's why For the Record is taking another look at who's watching Washington.
The government would never voluntarily turn over any information to you.
Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch, a conservative watchdog group based in Washington.
They don't even follow the Freedom of Information Act, and the only way it's enforced in a practical sense is by the willingness of groups like Judicial Watch to go to court. If we didn't have that court process in place, we wouldn't know half as much or virtually any of what Washington is doing on a day-to-day basis.
It's sort of like a little, it's a bureaucratic screw you. And the great thing about Judicial Watch is they will persist. They know how to appeal. They know how to litigate.
In 2013, there were 368 FOIA lawsuits filed, which represents a 43% increase since George W. Bush's last year in office.
This administration is much worse than the Bush administration in terms of transparency. And, we took the Bush administration to the Supreme Court over transparency issues, so we kind of know what we're talking about there. Congress is completely hapless in terms of oversight. And frankly, Chairman Issa, Obama has set so many fires on the horizon. Which ones do you rush to put out? Congress is physically incapable of handling all the Obama scandals. And because they're dragged in a million directions, they don't have the focus and the drive necessary and the long-term outlook necessary to conduct serious oversight.
Since we aired Who's Watching Washington, scandals have consumed the nation's capital. Fitton says there is a common thread linking all of them.
You've got IRS, you've got Benghazi, you've got now the VA, you've got abuse of power at the Environmental Protection Administration. You have all sorts of problems with the Obama administration, failure to enforce the law, failure to follow the law.
We have seen in this administration that they have a contempt for the rule of law.
We've had to file 150 plus lawsuits just to open records that the administration's hiding from the American people.
You have to mine everything for the nuggets. You have to cut through. It's like panning for gold. Most of the stuff is dreck. But you have to do the panning, and I think that's what the opposition always counts on, that people will lose patience and go away.
In April 2014, Judicial Watch launched an investigation into the 2009 allegations that then White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel and then Deputy Chief of Staff Jim Messina used their position and influence to affect the outcome of federal elections.
And it was acknowledged that Rahm Emanuel and Jim Messina, who was a top official in the White House, were calling candidates who were considering running in primaries against White House favored candidates and saying, don't run, and if you don't run, don't worry, we'll give you a federal job. That's outrageously illegal.
If the allegations are proven true, Emanuel and Messina would have violated the Hatch Act, which states that an employee may not, quote, use his official authority or influence for the purpose of interfering with or affecting the result of an election.
We have got to have term limits for bureaucrats, because it's like the reported comment by one bureaucratic director back in January of '81, well, the summer helps here. They think they run things and they're unaccountable, and they've gotten even more so under this administration. That has to be stopped.
Emanuel is now mayor of Chicago, and Messina now runs the Obama White House allied Organizing for America and is a political consultant. Judicial Watch filed a complaint with the Office of Special Counsel asking for an investigation.
They said, well, once they leave government, we don't have jurisdiction anymore, which is absolute baloney. Imagine you're not prosecuted or investigated for criminal activity because you leave office. That's not how it works in America.
One of the biggest stories of the year centers on the Internal Revenue Service's alleged targeting of conservative groups. While former IRS official Lois Lerner claims to have lost 2 years' worth of emails from the period in question, Judicial Watch was able to recover communications between Lerner and the Department of Justice discussing potential prosecution of applicants.
So it wasn't just about delaying applications. They were talking about putting people who opposed Obama, practically speaking, in jail. Congress, like Benghazi, Congress didn't get that document, only Judicial Watch got that document. So it's not just the IRS abusing its powers. You had the FBI doing it, you had the Department of Justice doing it, and we also have documents showing the FEC was similarly snooping inappropriately into conservatives who were daring to criticize the incumbent Democratic regime.
Many see the Department of Justice acting as a shield for the administration and their acts of lawlessness, even after Attorney General Eric Holder was found in contempt of Congress.
But it's interesting, in a court hearing on the Fast and Furious dispute, where Congress is trying to figure out why they were lied to about Fast and Furious, and Obama exerted executive privilege to protect those lies and keep Holder out of jail for contempt. The government lawyers got up and said, well, you know, certain records might be subject to FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, but not be subject to disclosure under a subpoena.
You know, Eric Holder thinks of himself as an ideologue and the president's lawyer first. He thinks of himself as the Attorney General a very distant second.
I mean, this guy's in contempt of Congress in every way you can imagine. And the reason the president will protect him and not let him go is he's protecting the president.
Fitton says that what links all of the scandals consuming Washington is an open disregard for the law and a culture of corruption.
This administration is violating transparency laws, evading subpoenas, obstructing congressional investigations, and really has contempt for the American people's right to know. And the fact that we're able to get this via lawsuits, these records via lawsuits, exposes their contempt for the law.
We wanted to update you on who's watching Washington because many of the updates you saw in this episode will be expanded upon in Season 3 of For the Record. Our team has exposed more questionable tactics by the Internal Revenue Service, including unlawful property seizures involving small business owners. You'll get a look at the war on coal and how it's really a war on the poor in the United States. For the Record returns in September with an in-depth look at the relationship between special interests, the media, and political power. You'll see how your tax dollars are used to maintain a system rooted in corruption and abuse of power, and it all happens inside the Washington Beltway. Be sure to watch TheBlaze for more updates and information on these stories and our Season 3 episodes. Thank you for joining us for this For the Record update. I'm Laurie Dew.